Alrighty. Hey everybody, it's my first time doing a live stream to my own channel, so here we are. I brought some friends with me today, and we're gonna. Hey everybody, how's it going?
Good. Welcome. Thank you.
So what I'm trying to do is I've got so much content that I haven't released that I'm just sitting on, and a big part of that is because I'm like self-conscious and self-aware of all the mistakes that I make, and I think that's a big benefit to recording my conversations is I can play them back and identify what I can do better for the next talk, or how could I have better understood somebody? How could I have slowed down in my way of thinking and reached an understanding of somebody else in a more efficient way? And today we're going to watch a presentation in which I'm trying to introduce SE, or street epistemology, to a group of skeptics in, I think it was Dallas, Texas, called Free Thought of Dallas, I think is the name of their group. They reached out to Anthony Magnabosco. Anthony had a full schedule, reached out to me, and I said I'd love to give it a shot. So this is my very first time giving a keynote speech, essentially, and then trying to bring in a workshop. So that way people who are new to SE can get their hands dirty a little bit and try to SE one another, or to SE me, or for me to SE them. So that way the audience feels engaged and participating in some element of SE without having to go to the nitty-gritty of bringing up a specific claim or belief, to see what the machinery of SE is kind of like. And so with that, I guess we can go ahead and watch it and see what happens. Point out all the mistakes I make.
All right, look forward to it. Here we go.
Thank you so much for this morning. It has been quite eye-opening and extremely engaging, and one of the best gatherings I've been to in a long time.
It exceeded my expectations. I had really high expectations of it being an interesting discussion, and it blew my mind. So.
And you will not be able to unmute yourselves with the exception of Nathan.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
So everybody else is sort of
blast from the past.
So let's get this party
just a couple months ago.
Yeah.
started.
Yeah.
So welcome everyone to the Fellowship of Free Thought September gathering. I am Lisa Perry, Executive Director, and this is Al, my husband, who helps me in every aspect of this organization. Just to let you know, we're going to record the meeting today. So if you have any concerns about that, just reach out to us afterwards and we'll address your concerns.
Yeah, and if the concern is such that you don't want to be on the video, I'd ask you to go ahead and turn your camera off throughout the presentation, and maybe even right mouse click on your picture and change your name, because there's a good chance we will use this video publicly, and I don't want to out anyone that doesn't want to be outed. But I'll need you to take responsibility for making sure you don't appear on the video by turning your camera off if you have a problem being on the video.
That's a good idea.
We're running the controls.
Okay, Boomer.
All right, so here we go. Try it again. Now everybody should be able to see that.
Okay, Fellowship of Free Thought is a 501c3 established in 2010. So we've been around 10 years.
I think we've gone past consent. Can we jump to?
And our mission
Sure.
is
Yeah. Let's go ahead and we can skip to probably. Yeah, this is just them explaining all the charity work that they do and things like that. And I think we can start here. Yeah, that's a good spot.
That's a really good point.
Thank you for that good example of consent.
Yes, indeed. And then if anyone wants to see the uncut version of it, well, I'll put a link in the description for us to watch later.
Yeah.
that evolved a lot after the pandemic happened, and I don't think I'd be capable of putting all this together and having this poll and doing what we plan on doing today in quite the same way if it weren't for the pandemic, which is really interesting how things work out that way, huh?
Yeah.
All right.
Focus on the positive, right?
All right. So should I go ahead and start and share my screen?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Street epistemology. So thank you all for listening.
That was powerful. Thank you so much. I enjoyed listening to that.
Good job. Yeah.
Do you have a link
just
that I
save
can
everybody to
listen to actually that? I don't
you
mean
want to
today.
actually listen to the keynote?
Well, I actually did. I heard it on the day when you did it, and I haven't heard this since. But do you have a link for that 20-minute piece?
I could probably work that out. Yeah, I have the raw footage somewhere, so yeah, I could probably post it. It's kind of dry though, and honestly, one of the reasons why I did that, skipped it out, is because you can easily go to Anthony's channel and get 4 other or 5 other much better, more flushed out.
Your audience sure seemed to like it, so you've definitely piqued my interest, even if I hadn't already heard it.
Sure. I think it was the clips that I showed and kind of like the connections I made with friends using it. And I think that is the reason why they liked it. And just like the overall attitude and approach, like we're trying to resolve disputes. How do we do that? I think that's very appealing to a lot of people. So that's probably one of the reasons why they liked it. But I was eager to get to this part. So this is the part where it's a grand experiment here, where I'm trying to see if it's possible to engage in an SE format with 32 people at once, or at very least get 32 people to feel engaged or involved in an SE conversation without it necessarily being one-on-one. Maybe it can be a whole group, but doing it through Zoom, like that's the part that's hard. It's like people need to take turns. And so what we did is we took the survey, the SE survey that you may have seen in some of my other videos. If you haven't, check it out. And we just threw it into a poll on Zoom and had people fill out the poll. And so we're about to find out how that works. Grand experiment. Here we go.
Yeah. Breaking new ground.
Conversation.
Yay.
So we're gonna do the polls now.
So I didn't make the survey that we're about to do. A fellow content creator, Ben Diesel, made the survey, and he's from South Africa. We've got street epistemologists from all over the world that do this, and he made this cheat sheet for people who are trying to learn street epistemology on different principles of epistemology, which are tools that we use to determine things that are true. And they're broken up into 4 categories. What is truth? How does belief work? When we should believe? And when we should change our minds. And each category has 6 statements that somebody else is saying. So somebody else is coming here and they're telling us a statement, and it's our task to either agree, slightly agree, neutral, slightly disagree, or strongly disagree to each of the statements. And you can be anywhere on the spectrum. There's not necessarily a wrong answer. Although there's probably going to be, there might be powerful agreement amongst us here, knowing that we're all like-minded, though I am anticipating a few outliners on some of these points. And what I'd like to do is for us to fill out the poll, and then if you raise your hand and you're called, what I'd like is for either you to ask me a question about it, or for to volunteer to be asked a question. And
Everyone should see the first poll. You can start answering the questions anytime.
yeah, go ahead and fill out the poll. It should be on your screen now.
That's the fun bit, waiting to see what the results are.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was so much fun.
it'd be cool to see like a screen recording of how it was changing over time. Just got the results later.
Wow, this is fascinating.
Yeah, it is. They, what he's talking about, Nathan and Lisa and I can see the results as they're coming in live. We're going to show them all to you in a moment. We were concerned that with so many skeptics that the answers might all line up, but I'm quite surprised we're seeing a wide variety of answers.
Yep.
So they couldn't see anybody else's results when they were taking the poll, right?
I think so. I think it was just the hosts, the two hosts, and myself that could see it.
Okay, that's good. It was blinded.
26 of the 38 have completed.
We have 31 of 38 completed.
Yeah, 81%.
We're at 32 of the 38.
I don't see any hands.
I don't see any hands, so let's call it done. How about that?
Hey. Wow, this is so fascinating. Okay. So can everybody see the results right now?
Also, you can unmute yourselves if you need to say something. Just use discretion if you're going to speak.
I think everyone can see the results, right?
They should be able to.
I can see it.
Okay. All right. So we have 4 votes for somewhat disagree, but no strong disagrees to number 1.
Having this graphic with the absolute and the percentages, I think the percentages work just as well as the absolutes. Just not having the absolutes would be my recommendation. That we could see
Sure.
in your face as well. Like that's all I need is percentages.
Yeah, the percentages. And also this is an older version of the survey, and number 1 is a bit of a harder pill to swallow than what we're using on the current version of the survey. And it could be part of the reason why there's some hesitancy. Yeah, and that's the current version, right? A statement is true when it corresponds to reality. And that's because it's lowercase t, true. And what do we put under the umbrella, that category of true statements? And just asking people what they think the criteria is for things that fit under that category. And that's much easier for people to agree about. But when we say the old version, which is truth is that which best matches external reality, it's essentially saying the same thing, but it's saying it in this like grandiose way that just has this like air of uncertainty about it. It's like best matches? What do you mean by best? Well, it'd be all the things that if we make a description about reality and it matches, could we imagine a better way to describe something which matches reality? And if so, would that be a more true statement? And so it causes a lot of questions to appear in the mind, and the confidence, you're filled more with doubt about it, which is maybe part of the reason why it's harder for people to agree with. I think the newer version is a little bit clearer. In any case, what we want to do is make this a workshop on how to charitably interpret things that we hear other people say. So if somebody else were to come here and they were to say, truth is that which best matches external reality, let's take the burden of understanding upon ourselves to try to charitably interpret what we believe that means. And if we do, can we paraphrase what we're hearing so that way we can have our conversation partner agree that we understand them using our own words. And so I think in future talks, what I want to do with people who disagree with a principle is get them on the first step of an SE conversation, which is show that you understand somebody, repeat what you're hearing, and paraphrase it in your own words with the aim to show your conversation partner that you get them and you understand them. So I think that's what I'll do in future talks. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, the
Cool.
survey is like some of these are claims in themselves, or really all reasons are additional claims you can investigate, by themselves alone. But some of them are justifications for higher order claims. And it depends on what the statement is that you're talking about. So this is good. I like it. Keep going.
Awesome. Yeah. It's really interesting. If anyone voted somewhat disagree to number 1, if you are feeling brave and up for it, would you like to raise your hand and either allow yourself to be asked a question or to ask me a question? I'm at strong agree for number 1.
That's interesting. You gave your answer right out of the gate.
Yeah, and maybe I won't do that for the next time. I think next time, though, I also don't want to be the one asking the questions. I'd rather have other people ask each other questions. Though I felt like if I just said, this is my position on it, it would encourage them to ask me a question to help me revise or explain myself in some way to get them to start the SE process for themselves. But maybe that was too much to ask at first.
Maybe ask for a specific volunteer for someone who voted 5 or 1. 5? Is 5 the highest? Like, strongly agree? Is that the one?
I would just say disagree or agree. There's no numbers
just
on
like,
this version.
Can I get a volunteer from someone who said strongly agree to that? And then can I get another volunteer for someone like the lowest?
Yeah.
The lowest person? Can they talk
right
for a second? Talk to each other? And you can mediate that. So that'd be interesting.
Right. That would be ideal.
Yeah.
I saw that Katie raised her hand.
Hi.
Hi, yeah, it's Katie and Griff.
Hi.
So, I was going to I think I'm kind of the oddball in the room. I just was reading that first question, and with regards to truth and how it, what was the first question that you were asking?
We're trying to define truth right now. Before we talk about what's true, we need to agree what the truth is.
Yes, external reality, that was it. So I was thinking with regards to a majority of people's opinions and a majority of people thinking the same way, would that not dictate truth?
I'm sorry, with people thinking the same way, so we can...
For example, if a majority of people, 51%, think one way versus 49% that think another way, would not the majority rule and dictate what truth is?
Can I ask you a question about that?
I would repeat back what I'm hearing him say. So what I'm hearing you say is, you think what I'm hearing you say is truth is that which is the majority, or truth is majority rule. Whatever it is that most people believe, that's truth. Is that what he's saying?
It seems like he's confusing truth with democracy, or truth and fairness.
Yeah, or the popularity of an idea, maybe.
Yeah, I think I was probably feeling a little hasty. This is an edited version, and I cut out like a 6-minute tirade that somebody. So this is right off the heels of talking to somebody else who was also dismissing objective truth in the same way that I understand it, and so I may be a little short-tempered, perhaps. So I didn't repeat quite like I should have. But that's a good point.
Yeah, here we go.
And dictate what truth is.
Can I ask you a question about that? In the past, when most of the world thought the Earth was flat, was the statement the Earth is flat an accurate statement?
No. But that was the truth. of the time.
So in your view, the word truth is synonymous with the common understanding? There it is.
Yes, I think the common understanding dictates the truth of the time.
Can the common understanding be false?
Yes, it can.
So is it true?
Then is it true? If
At
it's
the time,
false.
at the time, it's true.
At the time it was. So here's the thing. Is there a difference between what's considered to be true and something that is true? Is there a difference, or are they the same?
Considered to be true versus.
Yeah. So like if everyone considers something true, but it's inaccurate, is it still true? So we're playing with language, really.
Yes, we
We're
are.
playing I with stepped on the language of the word true.
Yeah.
And if truth isn't that which best matches, then is it what people agree about?
That's right, because you said best matches. And I
Yeah,
think
best.
the caveat in there allows for the inaccurate.
Right. Cool. Anybody else have, thank you so much for your input. Anybody else have any questions on number 1, or should we move on to number 2? I really appreciate you guys giving me input. That was great.
Any other feedback about that?
Yeah.
Good rapport and patience.
Good questions to work through. That was good clarifying it. It seemed like there was disagreement on the couch. It was like she was on board with you and he was going through a bit of dissonance maybe, but then the clarification sort of brought everyone together. That was good.
I presume that she's the one that brought him to the group discussion, and I think, I don't want to presume too much, but I have some insider information about a lot of different people on this thread. Let's just say that they're not quite done yet either. There will be somebody else that wants to chime in. Though one regret I have is not working as a facilitator for More SE. There is a question that's presented to them, though it's mixed in with some statements, and I think I would be more encouraging of like trying to turn your statements into questions. So we're about to find out what that looks like.
Cool.
All right, here we go.
All right, maybe we should move on to number 2. So that's generally
before we move on, just one question I had. If no living thing existed, would truth cease to exist? Or will it not be true regardless if there was no living thing? Will not things still be true regardless of whoever is there?
Yeah, so if a statement, okay, so is that a question for me?
No, that's a general question, especially to answer our question, Andre's, what he was saying, a question to him.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Does truth require an observer?
I think, was that for Katie and friends over
there? And friends. Okay.
Sorry, yeah. I was rereading the question and it was basically, it ends with external reality. Is that right? Is that?
Yeah.
So so my point is the external reality of the time dictates truth. Truth is that which best matches external reality. So the external reality of the time basically dictates the truth. And that's my argument with
Look at her face.
majorities. Majority groupthink, or however people are interpreting.
Does the truth depend at all on what anyone thinks?
Does the truth depend at all on what anyone thinks?
Yeah.
I think that's what it was trying to
Yes,
say.
absolutely. It's completely dependent on what people think.
Right. So I'm hearing two conflicting things.
Yeah. Look at her body language, and she's like, no.
I think there's a conflation between the map and the territory here, and I think making that analogy clear or metaphor clear is helpful for this question. Like, the map is created by humans. The map is dependent on what humans think and the consensus of experts based on whatever. But the territory itself, reality, that's going to be whatever it's going to be, regardless of what humans think about it. We are subject to reality. We can't really do anything about that. So yeah, that's
says you shameful materialist.
Yeah.
Quick question, Nathan.
Yeah, please.
Do you find this question, out of all on the survey, this is the one that people would benefit from spending the most time on? This idea about what is truth?
Probably. It's hard though, because I have definitely been in situations where people disagree to number one. And when that happens, recently I've been experimenting with starting with number 19 on the survey and going through when we should change our minds before talking about what the truth is. I often investigate beliefs do not match my own, but the final one is the one that I want to point to and ask questions about. It is possible that some of my beliefs are not true.
Yeah.
That's to me the one I want to spend the most time on, because if someone disagrees to number one, how is it that our beliefs could be false?
Yeah.
Right? If they don't, if they're not matching some external thing. So, and I feel like there's this emotional connection to knowing what it's like to be wrong. And there's this like aversion. We're trying to avoid being wrong at all costs for many, many things that we believe. And there's this fear of being wrong that I think is there, and it's real. And everyone's experienced being wrong in the past, at least to some degree. Most of us have anyway. And out of all the surveys I've ever done, only one person has ever disagreed to 24. It's the least disagreeable notion on the whole survey. And that is the thing. I want to know how someone can square the last one and the first one.
Yeah.
If it's possible that some of your beliefs are not true, then how could truth be anything other than the map and the territory and us trying to figure out what the territory is with our maps?
Right.
I see a ring species, but that might be such a weird metaphor. I don't need to go there.
It's essentially claiming infallibilism. They have a perfect map. They have a perfect perception of reality.
Yeah.
So that's a lot to claim.
I think the biggest place to trip up is this word reality. There's a couple of different like landmine words on the survey. Reality is a huge one. What else? Justified is another one. Like I feel like I almost have to set aside the survey just to talk about the word justified a couple of times. I feel like I need to set aside the survey to talk about the truth, what truth means also. And that's the whole point of the survey is getting common definitions for words, repeating what we're hearing other people say, trying to get other people to accept that we understand them, if it's true that we understand them. And doing our best to resolve disputes of understanding about things. Cool.
Yeah.
So.
Keep going.
The Earth was round, and what you think about the Earth doesn't change it to make it flat.
It doesn't matter. It's the truth. I mean, when you think about the word truth, again, we're getting into semantics here. I mean, you almost think of it more as a legal term. And with regards to law, everything is what you can argue.
Yeah, did that answer the question though? Philip had a question, or
I'm sorry. Yeah, Philip, we're kind of getting back and forth here. What was Philip asking again?
This is where his mic is muted.
You're muted.
He figures it out though soon.
I can't hear him.
No living thing. Suppose no living thing existed. Will that change the truth of anything at all?
I see what you're saying. The way I understand truth is it's more perception based. It's how humans perceive truth. I mean, we're the ones that are the thoughtful ones. So we're the ones that determine what's true and what's not true. And your statement and Katie's statement of the earth is round and that's not going to change anything. Doesn't matter.
My definition of truth is or what corresponds to reality. That is how I would define truth. What corresponds to reality. So for me, I would say, regardless of whether we perceive something to be true, quote unquote, it does not depend on us. That is more of a matter of, I think here we are we not equating perception and truth? That's why I'm wondering, are we not right now equating perception and truth? Because from a scientific perspective, truth is what comports to reality. Science does not does not declare what is true. It just tries to get to a method of trying to get as close to.
It's really hard to shoot your messenger.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted to interject and mention, shoot your messenger, finish with the question, because he made a great question, but then it's hard to stop yourself. Just ask the question, let the question speak for itself.
Mm-hmm.
Or the best explanation as to what we observe. But if there was nothing here, will not still things be true about the universe, about how the universe works? Does our perception change the truth or reality of things?
I think that's actually a point that's later down in the survey. And I really appreciate your guys' feedback. So I think we should move on to number 2, and then we'll probably get to that point here in a bit. Thank you for your questions and feedback. It's been really fun.
Good focusing.
All right, so let's move on. Number 2. This is one of my favorite ones. People experience the same reality and only interpret it differently. And we've got some hesitancy with the somewhat agree here. We got 7 people have voted strongly agree. We got some neutrals, somewhat disagree. This one's all over the map. So this one's really interesting. So I'll pose a general question, and if anyone wants to answer it, then let me know. I think of it like this. If we're playing a board game or a video game, like let's say it's Mario Kart or Scrabble or chess, are we playing on the same board or are we playing on the same console together? Even though we're experiencing it differently, like your vantage point might be different because you're across the table from me or you're sitting next to me while we're playing the game. Though, is the game shared? Or is the game actually a different game for both of us and we're in different realities? If anyone wants to give a go at that one.
Melissa has raised her hand. Let's hear it from her.
Okay.
Well, from my educational background in early childhood education, they talk a lot about the nature versus nurture and what plays into like how a person, their personality develops and stuff. And so I feel like I sometimes wonder, like, if the person you become and the beliefs you have, are they necessarily like your interpretations of the world and how you were raised and your genes and stuff? Not necessarily. I think we all do definitely interpret the world differently based on nature and nurture.
Yeah, I actually couldn't agree more. Yeah, absolutely. Where I agree with that is like, I am a culmination of nature and nurture, and I can't think of much else, right? Like my genetics, I didn't choose my genetics or where I was born or the language I speak and that sort of thing. Though in my thought experiment with the game, if we were to replace that word reality with the word game, like people experience the same game and only interpret it differently.
Yeah, the Zoom call thing, then that would work too.
Yeah, you could just use whatever comes to mind at the time. If you're on a car ride with somebody, like let's say you're doing the survey on a road trip, you could just say, "Are we sharing the same car ride?" Yeah, just think outside the box wherever you happen to be.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree to that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So maybe the word reality is what trips people up on this one, or maybe we interpret that word to mean something different. Though if we were to think of reality as a game, like the game of life, and we're sharing this, are we sharing the same objective reality in our own unique vantage point?
Yes, and also I think age comes into play too. Like a baby is going to have a different perception of reality than a 85-year-old who's lived a long life.
So like time is another variable in our
right.
For sure. Yeah, I agree. Anyone else have anything to say on this one? Because I'm personally strongly agree.
Yeah, I'm strongly agree. I just think reality is a fact, and our interpretation, of course, is unique. Every person interprets it different, in my opinion.
Cool. Anybody with a question at all on this one? Thank you for the feedback. If not, we can.
I keep restraining myself from asking questions.
What would you ask?
No, I'm not actually thinking of it. You keep asking, does anybody have a question? Oh, what should I think of? No, wait.
Yeah, I kind of jumped the gun on this one a little bit. Maybe in the future, I'll just ask if someone disagrees. And if they do, instead of jumping straight into my game analogy, I'll ask them what they mean when they disagree. Then I'll repeat back what I'm hearing them say. And then I will lay out the game scenario and ask how their understanding is different than the game scenario, or if their understanding works within the game scenario, rather than starting straight out of the gate. This is what I think number 2 means. This is how I ask questions about it. I think in my head, I'm thinking I've got like 32 skeptics here. They kind of want to learn some of the ways I ask questions, and I'm trying to burn through the list. So that's probably one of the reasons why I went so quick. Okay.
Yeah.
So we talked about this number 3 a little bit when we talked about number 1. Truth depends on the opinions and beliefs of people. And we got mostly strongly disagree here. Because does anyone have a question on this one here? Does anyone think that maybe the truth does depend on on the opinions and beliefs of people? We did address this a little bit with number 1, but if people had a chance to think about it and maybe they have a new question or some new proposition to give.
3% strongly agree, 13% somewhat agree.
No?
I have a quick, because I was going to say we were discussing the first one. So first of all, thank you so much for your talk today and very thought-provoking questions. Most appreciated. But so I think I am a journalist by trade. Well, by nature, I got my degree in journalism. So words are a big thing to me.
Yeah.
And I think there's a difference between truth, reality, fact.
Okay.
So like the world is round, right? That is a fact that cannot be argued, though people will say it's flat. The reality is such that the world is in fact round.
So just a clarifying question, when you say a fact, do you mean accurate and true? Are those words saying relatively the same thing and getting at the same thing?
Well, but I think truth can be interpreted to whatever I speak as my truth may not be scientific fact.
Ah, so to you, truth can be.
Yeah, Michael.
Good question. I love the way, because we mentioned before about how important it is to define words, so we're not talking at cross purposes. And you're asking her, what do you mean by fact? Because that's probably another key word to add to that list, right? Truth, reality, facts. So
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good.
Not only that, here's a part of the whole video in which I feel like I don't charitably interpret the burden of understanding, or I don't put the burden of understanding on myself as well as I could have. And I think part of the reason why is it's one of the phrase "my truth" is one of my pet peeves. I have a problem with that phrase. That phraseology I feel like is obfuscating what's going on. It's basically saying I hear it to mean I believe and I can't be wrong about what I'm about to say. When I hear my truth, I'm thinking like, well, it's my truth, so done and done, right?
That's becoming my pet peeve too. Yeah. I just finished an 8-week workshop, and in week 5 we went through the survey, and I thought everyone was on board with it. And then last night on the final session, with 15 minutes to go, one of the participants said, "But how do we really know what's true? Isn't that my truth?" And I was like, what have we been doing for 8 weeks? That's turning into my pet peeve as well. So that's why I asked that question before. I'm thinking maybe I should spend more time on what objective truth is. Accords with reality, and there's another definition from accords with reality as adjudicated by predictive power. Get more into that. Yeah, that's becoming my pet peeve too. It's like very frustrating.
I brought this up with Peter Boghossian. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. I want to argue with her blatantly about whether you can argue about whether the Earth is round. I've seen too many examples of people on both sides actually arguing that. And no, it is true. You can argue about it.
It's an oblong spheroid, right?
Sure, it's an oblate spheroid, or maybe it's inside out.
Or oblique. Right. There's always a more accurate way we can say it.
Right, but I'm saying you could even argue that it was flat. People do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a bit of a thought-terminating cliche to say something cannot be argued, because literally, that's never the case. Solipsism could be argued.
Sure. Oh, true. Yes. Actually, if solipsism could be argued, then that almost just necessitates anything can be argued from there, right?
Right, exactly. I think it's a mistake to say something can't be argued. I understand what she means colloquially. She's seeing an idiom. It's beyond doubt.
Right. Yeah. She's just saying like it's ludicrous to suggest something that is so obviously false is true. When I brought up this true for concept, or when I brought up my truth concept with Peter Boghossian, when I met him at the gym, he just was like, that there's true for and true, and I'm probably going to butcher it, so I'm going to take the words out of his mouth and put them into mine instead, and say, like, if I have a preference, it's true for me that, The Matrix is the best movie, for example, or something like that. And that's true if I'm being honest. Though the only way you'll know is if you look into my mind or I don't know how you would determine that necessarily, because it's a subjective preference in which I'm describing, and it's either inaccurate or it's not accurate. It's inaccurate, right? So that could still be true or false, though it has nothing to do with the external world. And this is why originally number 1 had the phrase external world in it, to differentiate between statements that are true for a subject, in which we understand they're only true for that subject, and things that are true because they're in the world in which we both share. And like the Tic Tacs are either even or odd. And what I think about whether or not they're even or odd has nothing to do with the evenness or oddness of the Tic Tacs in the box.
Yeah.
Though if I define even to be how you define odd, then that's just a language game from there. That's where number 4 comes into place. So yeah. Anyway, rant over. Cool. That's pretty much it. True 4. Important to distinguish the difference between true 4 statements and true statements.
Yeah. And if we had, I mean, we are physical beings in a physical reality. If we had the ability to read minds, I assume that's in principle possible, then we could determine what is true for anybody about whatever. You know, it's, you know,
right.
It's just a pattern of neurons, presumably, or something to do with that. So, and then we could tell who was lying about their preferences. And that would be interesting to see. So it's just our inability to test that at this point. But in principle, we are still in reality ourselves. And there can still be potential truth statements about our preferences maybe in the future. That might be happening. Yeah. All right, want to keep going?
Yeah, absolutely.
All righty.
So let's see how badly I handle this.
It sounds like when you say the words can be possessed, it sounds like when you say the words my truth, how is that different than truth?
Well, what I mean is that the way I choose to live my life is my truth, and the way somebody else chooses to live their life is their truth. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we can agree to disagree on the fact that the earth is round.
Can it be my truth that the earth is flat?
You can believe that the earth is flat, but that that makes it your truth. That doesn't make it true.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, is the phrase my truth synonymous with the word belief?
Yeah, actually.
Okay.
I think when we use the words truth, fact, belief, reality, you have to be very careful where you tread, because your verbiage may be different than someone else's verbiage, even with those 4 words.
So I have a comment. It sounds to me like there's 2 definitions of truth being discussed. One is synonymous with reality, and one is synonymous with the opposite of a lie.
Oh.
The opposite of a lie.
So my truth, I'm not lying if I tell you the earth is flat. If I really believe it, it's my truth. You know, I know it based on my, you know, whatever I've done to my epistemology, whatever I've done to come to that. So is that possible that some people here are talking about the opposite of a lie?
Ooh.
I mean, for me.
What?
Ooh, if I just take it as the opposite of a lie, and I define a lie as something that you are communicating that you do not believe, that leaves open a definition of truth that is far more permissive than I allow. I mean, I personally prefer the way Pelagia says it. Truth is that which corresponds with reality adjudicated by predictive power. So like that, but and that's not the strict opposite of a lie.
Yeah, I think she's hunting for the same kind of reasoning that we were just describing about something that can be true relative to a subject if we understand that the subject is the only thing we're trying to describe. So like my favorite movie is The Matrix or whatever, and that's true for me if it's true. And maybe what she's saying is it's the opposite of a lie, maybe with regard to preference. Maybe that should have been a question I could have asked to further clarify what she's saying, because I feel like I get the sense from her that she's understanding it the same way I am. We're just seeking the right words to articulate how we're thinking about our way of thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm only looking at, I don't like the opposite of a thing that has a motivation tied into it. I could be completely wrong without lying. So what's the opposite of being completely wrong? It's not the same thing. It's still false.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can be sincerely mistaken.
It sounds like she's talking about belief
Absolutely.
in that context.
Yeah. All right, keep going.
Yeah,
Okay.
I guess. Yeah, when I think of the word truth, I think truth and lie. That's really where. And for I don't know. I guess I'm so science-based, minded-wise, that if you can't prove it to me, if there isn't evidence to support that, then I'm going to have a really hard time believing you, even if you believe it to be 100% true. I need the proof that it does exist.
And when I hear the word truth, I can substitute it for reality. Like, it's
interesting.
Regardless of what I know or don't know about it, there is a reality, and that is the truth. But I can understand what you mean when you say, you know, if something's true to me, I'm not lying if I say it, even if it doesn't.
Right. I'm not saying, like, I may not agree with your idea that the world, I'm using that as an example, y'all, because it was the first, thank you, Kate and Griff, for that in my head, but that's what's working for me. I'm not going to tell you that I may not agree with your belief, but that doesn't mean that I have a right to infringe on that belief.
Can I ask one question about the phrase, my truth? Can I have any, is there any reason to say my truth ever instead of belief? Why ever use that phrase? Is there any reason for it?
I'm trying to suppress the rage.
There's another good thing I noticed there,
I
that
think it's
this could easily blow up with dissonance and people doubling down, and by you asking that question, it gets control back.
Yeah.
So that's good to see. Yeah.
Or maybe like ask that more neutrally. What is the best reason to say my truth? Or when is it reasonable to say my truth? Maybe that's a better way to ask it.
Yeah. Or in what instances would saying I believe be better than saying my truth, or vice versa? What's the reason for it? Yeah, those are all good points.
Yeah.
There's a way to,
as opposed to saying I believe or I think that or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I my pet peeve is like bubbling to the surface here, and you'll be able to tell it in my voice here soon. So it's one of my biggest regrets of the whole talk.
Oh man.
Why ever use
it's not
that
bad,
phrase?
but
is there any reason for it?
If that's the worst, you're fine.
I don't know why we would ever.
Well, I think it's more of a catchphrase now in society, that people say I'm living my truth or I'm living my authentic self.
Is that kind of like saying, and correct me if this is like a sensitive question or anything, like I don't mean to offend, I'm just genuinely curious, like is saying my truth synonymous with I can't be wrong?
Oh no, I am readily able to admit when I am wrong.
Okay, but then why?
But
why should we ever use that phrase, my truth?
But
bad wording on my part, honestly. I was just, for me, like I said, for me, the words truth and lie and belief and reality, other people use them interchangeably, but when I use them, I'm very particular about the word that I choose to use when discussing certain topics.
Cool. Do you have any final words on this before we move on to the next one? Did you have anything else you wanted to mention about it?
I'm good.
Very thought-provoking. Thank you for participating.
Thank you for hearing me out.
Also, one thing I was probably bad, it was saying, sorry if I'm about to offend you in any way with my next question. sets up a defensive posture within the other person. So like if you're about to say, my next question is going to be, you know, really outrageous and it could potentially be taken as offensive, that might actually encourage them to think that it might be.
Yeah.
Instead, I would rather slow down and find a way to ask the question in a way that shouldn't be taken with any offense at all, would be the better alternative. And honestly, it wasn't even an offensive question. It should have just been like, what was the question I asked again? It was something like, why should we ever use my truth or something like that?
Yeah.
Why ever use it? Yeah.
I should have just presented that instead of, is it synonymous with saying I can't be wrong? That was the question I had. If somebody has a truth, maybe this would be a better question. If somebody has a truth, can they be wrong about it? Maybe it would have been a better question. That would have been less, putting the burden of understanding on me rather than on them.
And then you have the same way outsider test. If I have this person and this person and they disagree, is either one of them wrong? That's sort of the tic-tac long way around.
Yeah, or just ask, when someone says something is my truth, are they also at the same time saying they can't be wrong about that thing that they're saying is my truth?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Cool.
Great. Okay, number 4, unless anybody else has something to say.
I think we're getting caught up on the truth and the definition and interpretation of truth, and that's really, I think, causing an impediment. And my 2 bits is just that the truth changes with time. You know, everyone loves to talk about science and all these facts and stuff, and facts of science will change as the future progresses. Right now, I'm sure everyone loves all the planet stuff, and they're talking about how life is inhospitable on Venus, and then who knows, 100 years from now, they'll be like, oh, there's life on Venus. All those people 100 years ago were such fools. They had no idea. You know, they thought that there wasn't life on Venus. Anyway, I'm just shooting that out there.
Yeah, real fascinating. All right, let's move on to the next one. Number 4. Is it number 4? Yeah, we're on number 4, right? People create words and define their meaning. There's only a couple of somewhat disagrees. I'll just pose a question to the class. Is there anything other than people that create words and define what they mean?
You could have asked for a volunteer if someone said neutral or disagree, and then ask them about why they put that as an answer.
Right. I think that's what I will do for pretty much any future talk with the survey. I feel like because there's so many people, my approach is slightly different than normal, though, and maybe I haven't been so good at doing this in the past, but in the future, I definitely intend on starting with, what do you mean by disagreeing? What do you think this is trying to say? If somebody were to come here and say this to us, how would you interpret what they intend on saying, and why would it be justified to disagree to it? For what reason would it be justified to disagree to it? And are we being kind in our interpretation of what the intent is behind the statement? And starting there, and then work in with the questions like, given that we know what people are, we know what words are, is there anything other than people that create words or define what they mean? And that would be a better starting point. I think that one could say the external world is what we attribute meaning to as reference. So our meaning is referencing the external world. Like, people can come up with all sorts of great things to talk about on this. But it's about starting with what we think the point is trying to say on the survey. Yeah. Okay.
1 second.
Sure.
I'm also thinking of something else I would do if I did one of these.
Yeah.
Which line
C
is closest here to the
C looks like right away. I mean, that's my impulse. My impulse is to say C.
Yeah.
But now I think it might be something else, like a trick. Is it a optical illusion? I love optical illusions, by the way. That's kind of what the channel's logo is all about. And impossible shapes and optical illusions.
I have high confidence C.
C.
I think it's C.
Michael?
I'm just getting my pen up. I'm going to cheat. Hang on a sec.
Yeah, if I have a ruler, can I stick the ruler up to the...
Yeah, I'm going with C. You're going to say B. You're going to say B. I'm going with C.
There's the, do anybody know what this is about? What I'm bringing this up for?
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm
okay,
familiar.
I would love to be able to tell, before I did an SE survey, I would love to know who would pass the Ash conformity test. Like now that we're going through all the answers, I want to know who would pass this test, or like, what is it? Like, not conform is the right way to say it. And if people, I want to know, like, I want that Venn diagram of people who don't conform to, I'll explain the experiment for this thing. It's like people would bring maybe like 5 people into a room, and they would put this on the screen, and they would ask people one in a row, each going by each, but they're all actors except for one person. And the last person is hearing people say, it's A, but they're seeing, but they're seeing with their own eyes, it's C.
Yeah.
So when it gets to them, do they say A or do they say C? Do they conform or do they not conform?
Wow.
So I would be most interested in the whatever answers to the SE survey is, that is the people who don't conform. Because I don't know, because then I would know, now that they've seen what the answers are, now that I'll have high confidence that they really will like have interesting reasons, or those are people who are the more interesting people to talk to. So that's what I would do.
When I did this survey with that class, that was about 6-7 people in there, and as we got through half the questions, I noticed that everyone was sort of close to each other. So I mentioned the in-group bias, and I said, don't fall for the trap of in-group bias. Please feel free to share your honest opinion. If you disagree with the group, share your honest thoughts. And from that point on, there was one or two people that just went completely different. They just opened up and they just started answering differently. So I thought that was helpful, just pointing that out, that we can fall the trap to in-group bias sometimes.
Yeah, like
I think the most.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the most famous example of this is when people step into an elevator, and if you hire a bunch of actors to all face the wall, people will walk in and face the wall too, just because it feels unnatural to face the door when everyone else is doing something different. You just want to go along to get along. It's part of our psychology. It's really interesting.
Yeah, this is a Zoom call with like a moral community of skeptics in a particular place. I assume they would usually meet together in person at some point as well. So they have So now, and you're listing a bunch of like values, but potentially. So it's like they want to align with the values of the moral community, or else they would be potentially ostracized from that moral community. So that's another social pressure of conforming to certain answers now that they know what most people responded with. So, but if people answered differently and didn't conform, then that would also be something to look into for that person. Those are the people I want to talk to. People who don't conform, if their moral community says something that is blatantly false. I like those people.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed.
All right, well, keep going.
And we like you too.
Please. All right, here we go.
I'm a linguist, so I would say that speech communities create words and define their meanings.
Speech communities.
Yeah. So
Are
as
speech
a
communities made of people?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But people could imply individuals, and there has to be a common ground of understanding, is what I'm saying.
Right.
And that comes from the community and not from me personally or you personally.
So like if I didn't speak English and I spoke Spanish instead, you might not be able to understand. We might not be able to understand each other. So I'm hearing you say that
because we would not be members of the same speech community. Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing like it's our common understanding of these words.
Yes.
That gives words meaning.
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone have any issue with that, or know how to ask questions about it, or have any questions about asking questions about it? This one's kind of crucial because epistemology is working with language a lot, especially like the word truth is an abstract word and this abstract concept. So we're trying to reach common understanding on what that word means before we talk about what is true.
I would like to add a comment. As we're talking about truth here, I keep thinking back to the oath you take in court. Tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. What you're really doing is you're going to tell what you believe happened, sincerely believe. And
that's correct.
I've always kind of considered truth to be something ethereal that you might not ever know, objective truth, if you will. But in court, we take a whole different perspective, even though we didn't realize it.
I couldn't possibly agree more. I'm in full agreement with that. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I feel like that one's pretty easy for us, and generally we all agree on number 4. So it's more or less. There's some somewhat agrees, and I just like people to out there think to themselves why they would not be strongly agree. Though I feel like we're probably all on the same page. Maybe there's just some hesitancy there. But it sounds like so long as we have an understanding of what words mean, that's what enables them to work. Like seems like that's what gives them utility, right? Okay.
So Wayne Coltrane, I apologize. I noticed you had your hand.
Failing to shoot my messenger a little bit there. Probably would have been better to just say, think about better ways to ask questions about this. If somebody were to disagree or agree, what question could we ask to slide on our scale to either agree or disagree? What would need to be true for us to change our position about this?
Yeah. And this is all in service of having better conversations with people about things.
Right. Rather than dictating how to answer the survey the right way, which is kind of what I just did there. Should have been more, right, exactly. This is about conversation, not about me going around telling people how to think about how to answer these.
Yeah. Maybe like try to give examples of where these principles show up in usual SD conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's ways, and that gives context to why you're discussing this principle. Like a lot of times people will be talking about a certain thing, a certain claim, and they'll be talking about it, and then they figure out, oh, we're not talking about the same thing. So now we need to go back and restart. But also sometimes people say certain words, that's just how they think of the word, and that's just what it is. And we should just take their authority on it. Or should we defer to a different authority for the definition? Where does the authority for a definition come from? And when does that come into conflict in conversations? And how do we resolve that? Yeah.
Like I like to let people use their definition for words when they're the ones making a claim with the word in it. And if I'm making a claim or asking a question, then I want to make sure that my word within the question is being understood the way I understand it. And if it's not, then I want to discard that word and adopt a different word that might be just as suitable. For example, with number 2, when it comes to reality and the game, if somebody thinks reality is what I perceive in my head, which is probably the most common conflation of definition versus the way I would use the word reality, then I substitute the word reality for something else that's more concrete, that gets across the intent behind the statement.
Yeah, so like a principle in SE is like go with their definitions for whatever claim.
Right.
And sometimes skeptics and skeptic communities want to defer to like the dictionary and like debate about that. Go with the dictionary, they say. And now we're saying, no, people create words and define their meaning. Do you agree with that? So therefore, just go with their definition in SE conversations. You don't have to have a war against, usages in the dictionary.
Jujitsu. Jujitsu is a good analogy for this. Like, we're going with their movement, right?
Yeah.
And in jujitsu, it's very similar. You're not resisting or pushing back. You're hearing what they have to say and going with it. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Here we go.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I want to start off with the whole idea of epistemology is a tree with many branches, so we can go a long way with this and branch off. But I want to just
cool fox blanket.
Right.
Off with the whole idea here seems to be around inductive logic, and I want to read this because it's easier to read it than just say it. An inductive logic is a logic of evidential support.
Oh, is this the guy?
Oh boy.
This is one of the guys. There was more than one. This one I felt like keeping in just because it was a good way to distinguish. Well, you're about to find out, but basically, next time somebody's reading something to me in a group setting, I'm going to interrupt them politely and ask them not to read. And instead tell me what they really think about the statement in question that we're talking about on the survey or to make a claim. Though I wanted to fast forward to show you that I just sat there and listened for a while and let him read off. Essentially, he's talking about inductive versus deductive reasoning. It isn't really quite what we're talking about at the moment, so we'll see how I handle it.
Okay, yeah. All right.
Yeah.
You have the ability to learn in a certain way. So there are innate ideas.
Can I try to put that in a layman's terms?
Let me finish.
Oh, sure.
So basically, let me give an example of induction. It's a very common. It's usually fortune that you could be wrong. That's called black swan.
That's where we go to mute. Press the mute button.
But in empirical, you're only limited to the evidence that you've gathered.
Hey Wayne, do you have something? Hey Wayne, let me interrupt for a second. Do you have something to say about the number that we're talking about on the survey?
We're on about. I'm just in general. I don't agree with any of these things. So
what?
You don't.
He disagrees with epistemology.
Anyway,
that best matches reality, for example.
I'll change my answer on that to strongly disagree.
To strongly disagree.
Yeah.
Wow.
Can
you said matches external reality, so
truth is not a statement that best matches the world, or
no,
it's not. What is it?
It's based on deductive reasoning.
Okay, that's what it's based on. I'm asking.
That's going to be the truth.
So the truth is
truth
deductive reasoning?
Yes.
If I ask you, if you tell me something that you think is true, and I say, is that true? What am I asking exactly?
Let me give you an example. Is a electron, does it behave as a particle or as a wave?
So if I give you an accurate
I'm
answer,
so triggered right now. I'm so triggered. I'm trying really hard to not be triggered by that. And one of the fastest ways to trigger me is to appeal to quantum physics to explain why everything is wrong and everything is right simultaneously. It's like you're essentially saying that this is a waste of time. That's what I'm hearing. But when it comes to quantum physics, I think he's trying to illustrate a point about the nature of truth. And I'm going to try to calm down and do my best to handle a situation in which quantum physics is brought up. So we're about to find out how I handle it.
Okay.
If it's accurate, is it true? If it's accurate?
I'm giving you something that there's an electron. Will it behave as a particle or a wave?
It appears to be under different circumstances.
I shouldn't even bother answering this, but
the observation
I'll
of it
get to it in a
seems
second.
to change the behavior of it. So it depends on how we're measuring it and how it's affecting the external. So if we're measuring it,
it's both. Both are true.
If we're not measuring it, then it seems to be a wave, right? A wave pattern. And if we are measuring it, it seems to be.
I shouldn't even be doing this, but you'll see.
Just thank him and move on. That's what you do.
Well, we'll see how we do it.
Okay.
Consolidated.
I'm about to make a point.
A single point
in a question.
Into a particle. Aren't these statements accurate?
Is it a particle or is it a wave?
So if the answer that I give you to your question is correct, if the answer I give you to your question is correct, hypothetically, is it being correct the thing that makes it true?
So repeat your statement.
If I give you a correct answer, is the fact that it's correct the thing that makes the statement true? Whatever answer I give you, so long as it's accurate, is the accuracy of my answer the thing that makes it true?
It could be true. It may not be true.
Yeah, if it isn't accurate, then can you and I agree that we would call that false?
It depends on whether it's under a particular universe, because things change, like quantum physics. Everything changes.
For sure, yeah. Like the outcome.
Truth in one area is not truth in another. Rules of physics totally change, and that's just one thing we know about. We only know what we can obtain from our five senses. So that's the only thing we have to determine what's true. We don't know that there are other senses.
Yeah, so those are different epistemologies, right? You're describing methodology. I'm hearing, and correct me if I misunderstand you, but I'm hearing methodology, which is ways to arrive at truth. And you're describing the difficulty of doing that. And I'm just trying to
maybe you could
point out
include that is a perceived truth.
Perceived truth?
If you're using external truths, then it's what your perception of it is.
Retail.
Yeah.
Oh, he's arguing from solipsism.
Is he?
I'm seeing a very strong personality, and you're being helpful. Like you're asking questions, even though there's doubling down. I think you're handling it well. Maybe one thing I'm thinking about is that I can learn from this is just bring it back to existence. Like no matter what is happening in quantum mechanics, does it exist or does it not exist? You know, and if truth is,
I think you'll find this guy's an idealist. Yeah. I think when you dig in there, you'll find that he thinks consciousness is first, and tangible, tactile reality is open to doubt.
So, are you hearing that he's misunderstanding measurement as consciousness determining what's happening at the quantum level? Is that what you're thinking there?
Maybe the way he's arguing seems to lead me in that direction, and I'm not really sure. And boy, is it a rabbit hole away from the questions of what do we see as truth.
Maybe Reid's advice is best.
He looked up epistemology and looked for arguments against it.
Yeah, maybe Reid's advice is best. Go, yeah, thank you. All right, let's move on.
Yeah. But that's okay. You're coming off graceful, so you're fine.
But yeah, I think you're asking good questions though, because you're trying to understand. It's still, to me, looking like it's a partnership from your point of view. I'm seeing you as genuinely trying to understand, asking questions. It's a partnership, trying to get clarity so that there's a consensus ad item, a meeting of the minds between you two. So I'm not saying that as bad, but I could definitely see there's a lot of potential there for this to go south with that strong personality. Yeah, maybe going on a bit too long, maybe, not sure.
Yeah, I'm hearing him say kind of like truth is best determined through deductive arguments that use empirical evidence. And but that might break down in some levels of analysis, like quantum theory and the status of electrons being a particle or a wave. Sometimes our logic breaks down in some levels of analysis, so we have to be careful.
Did you hear him say something in praise of empirical evidence?
He said 5 senses. We understand truth through our senses. Maybe
Right. I think what he was trying to say is anything that we get through our senses is flawed, but if we can get it through deduction, it's perfect.
Oh.
I think he's got a high reliability on deductive logic.
Okay.
Which leads me to the Aquinas. And,
meanwhile, I'm just trying to find the criteria we're using to fit things under the umbrella of truth claims. And I'm just trying to ask him, is the accuracy of the meaning of our statements what makes things true? And so he was asking, like, in the double slit experiment, is it a particle or is it a wave? And it's kind of a gotcha, right? Because it's both.
Yes,
I'm trying to undercut that by saying, if I give you an accurate answer, is that the thing that lets you fit it underneath the what you consider to be the truth? Or is it something else? And if it is something else, what is it? And I think I do ask that. I think he says perceived truth or something like that, and I'm not sure what to do with that. So
I think you're asking it when you ask him, if I ask a question and it's correct, so I think you're asking it because even though when you look at wave particle scenario, it's really not both at the same time. It's only until it's measured. But even let's say that it is both at the same time. Let's say there's this many worlds theory that he subscribes to, and that what comes into our world depends on what happens when it's measured. Let's say that's the point of view that he's coming from. Whatever is the case, it exists. It either exists or it doesn't. Whether it exists at the same time or it exists as an electron or exists, I'm seeing it as, well, it exists or it doesn't. And so there's either an answer that accords to reality. It either exists in the way that you're presenting it or it doesn't. And so there's the difference. So I think the question you ask is a good question, but it can just be such a rabbit hole to go down because it's such a, do we really understand what he's talking about from his point of view? It can be quite complicated.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah. Okay.
All right, we'll keep going.
In regard to the language, I would suggest I've been studying Wittgenstein, and he goes into a lot of the stuff about the use of language.
So this will be my last question, Wayne. What would you rather number one say?
Put the question back. Put it back up there. I don't know exactly.
Oh, it's truth.
Word for word.
Truth is that which best matches external reality. What would you say instead?
I would say truth is.
In one sentence, you have one sentence only.
Best matches perceived reality.
Perceived reality. Interesting.
Ooh, ouch.
Okay.
I think what we're going to have to do is have a follow-up street epistemology session.
Yeah.
To me, that's a disagreement to Tony 4. To me, and this is why I've been experimenting with starting with the end, because is it possible that some of my beliefs are not true? If truth matches perceived reality, then can I be wrong? Or can I think anything that's not true if I perceive it? So like, how would this work? How would this definition work with the meaning behind these words?
It works anytime your ontology, if you have a metaphysical reality that's different than what it appears to be, like we're in a simulation or in the mind of God or we're a brain in a vat, any of those things means that the value for truth that we use is what we can objectively see within the reality that's coming to us through our senses. But he's unwilling to accept that that is fundamental reality. And I say that's okay. That's an okay doubt to have, as long as you can make decisions within the game that we're playing.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right.
Okay. Cool.
All these discussions today, but it's fantastic that we've uncovered that, you know, we don't even really agree on what truth is.
Right. I've done 200 of these surveys, and the thing that really shocked me the most was how much disagreement there is on what the word true means. It's one of those abstract nebulous concepts, and it's fascinating to ask each other questions about it. So I really encourage people dig into it more, because we take for granted every single day that we even agree what the word true means, let alone what is true, right? Like what to put under the category of true statements is hard enough. And if we don't have a common understanding of the definition for truth, then it muddies up our ability to resolve disputes of truth.
Does this mean
Consider
that
factual.
Clinton asked depends on the definition of is? It wasn't really a stupid comment.
I didn't hear any dumb comments today. They're all like, you know, people expressing
misheard
their
her there
deeply
a
held
little bit.
understandings. And
Did somebody put in the chat like it depends on what the definition of is or something?
Yeah, she was bringing up a Bill Clinton joke, and I misheard her and thought she was talking about some audience. So anyway, but yeah,
right, that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciate everybody's feedback. And I mean, I'd love to answer any questions, but I know that we're kind of going over time, so we can always come back and try to do this again.
Really, really, really quick, guys. I actually have to go back to work, so I just want to say thank you so much for this morning. It has been quite eye-opening and extremely engaging, and one of the best gatherings I've been to in a long time.
Yay!
So thank you so much for doing what you do and joining us today. It was wonderful to meet you.
Thank you.
I hope to talk to you again.
Appreciate you. See you around.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Nice.
What was that? Does that mean we have time for one more?
We can do one more.
Number 5. Something is true if everyone agrees to it. Did we do this one already? Because we went back to number 1. So I lost track.
There could be a lot of agreement on that one, so that one might not be a great one.
So if everyone agrees to something, is that the thing that makes it true? And I think we all talked about how a lot of people way back in the day all thought the earth was flat, right? Though, did the statement, the earth is round, was that false because people didn't consider it? I think everybody's in agreement on that one, although there's a somewhat disagree, and maybe that's just going back again to the definition of truth. Unless anyone has anything to say on that one, I'm ready to move on. Okay. All right. Number 6. And this one is all over the place. I love it. It's great. It's so fascinating. I'm like, this is so fascinating. Strong belief, even without action, can change external reality.
Wow.
So anyone have a question or want to be asked a question that, let's see here, even without action can change external reality?
So for anyone that's actually planning on doing this survey with somebody they know or with a group of people they know, again, try to get your conversation partner to interpret what they think the statement means using their own words. And this one is probably the most important to be cautious about when it comes to how to interpret it. This one is probably interpreted in different ways, more so than any other on the entire survey, in my experience. with talking with other people about it. So just tread lightly. Don't just go in with your definition thinking that it's only about prayer or law of attraction or something like that. Because people could be thinking that this means something else. And if so, that gives you an opportunity to leverage understanding, either by changing the words that are used in the statement to convey what you think it means, or to go with their definition. In either case, it's helpful.
Yeah, I interpret this statement as like telekinesis is true. People can change things with just their mind.
Yeah, I think of prayer or law of attraction as like the primary things. Though more times than not, people think belief itself is an action, like requires time to evaluate your confidence. And through that time, you're reflecting on it. You're causing an action in your brain somehow because your brain is under the beholden to the laws of physics, right? So, but that's the nitty gritty of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Melissa waved at the screen, and we got Kate waving.
Anybody that agrees is probably somebody I want to engage in.
I don't even understand the question.
You muted yourself.
Oh, no.
So if you believe in something strongly and do not act on your belief at all, does it change the external world? I think so some background on this. I think the spirit of the question, or the spirit of the statement, rather.
This is another good example of something to like give context to why this principle is on the survey. Like we hear this principle related to certain claims and justifications when we talk about X, Y, and Z. Yeah.
Rather, is to call into question whether or not things like prayer or law of attraction work.
There you go.
Or change the external world. If I believe something really hard, does it change the external world in any way? Even if I do not act on it, no action whatsoever on the external world, my mind makes the external world change.
Ellen would like to say something.
Mm-hmm.
Ellen, you have to unmute yourself though. Sorry.
Where'd she go?
She's right there.
There she is.
Here I am. Okay. I believe that beliefs can create a climate, for example, a climate in which it is acceptable to separate children from their parents and put them in cages, and that men should make decisions about women's health and lives.
Interesting. In that scenario, is that climate happening because people are expressing their beliefs?
To some extent, yes.
If no one did express their beliefs at all, and additionally also didn't act on them, would it change the external world?
I'm not sure about that. That's an interesting question.
I think that's a really unique input, and I like the feedback. I think that you and I probably agree about what this statement means. Yeah.
Yeah, I think she was talking about, expressing the belief on like Fox News or wherever, and that, changes other people's beliefs, and that changes the world through, their influence. But, action, speaking it is an action. So, and that's the question we're talking about.
Right.
So I wouldn't really necessarily push you any further than that, unless you had anything else to say about it.
No, I'm good.
Thank you. So I got a lot of neutrals and a lot of somewhat agrees. So
Kate, you were waving around on that question. Did you have something you wanted to add?
You explained it.
Well, this is, when you say action, for example, prayer, for someone who would pray, would that count as an action? Because people obviously believe that prayer can affect external circumstances and change things.
That's a good question. Like, is prayer considered an action?
I I would say it is.
Let's say for the sake of this conversation that it's not an action, that it's an internal thing. So let's say somebody isn't physically exhibiting any kind of action whatsoever, and they're in their own head, they're praying. So let's say it's not an action, just prayer. Does strong prayer, even without any action at all, change the external world in any way?
I would say yes, but I think it's
so it's a skeptics group, but I think Kate here brought along her partner, and this was a can of worms I would have loved to go down. This is a claim in it of itself. I would have loved to spend a ton of time on this. I felt for the sake of brevity, I was just going to accept his answer and just move along to the next thing. Only because at this point, I think I was hitting the 2-hour mark and I was just about to go over my time. And I knew that this was going to itself be an entire SE interview. So we'll see. Yeah, but this is a great one. What do you guys think? What would be a good question to ask, though, if I had the time to ask a question? If somebody says, I think prayer works. I mean, my instinct is just to start with what, why, how. What is prayer? Why do we think that works? And how do we know it? Is that is that kind of how you would drill that? Okay.
Yeah. What criteria could we use to test to see if it is working? What could we observe to show us when it's not working?
In those what questions, what qualifies as prayer and what wouldn't, therefore would be ineffective? What are the important components of an effective prayer? And how could we test which components are the most important?
Yeah, it's a hypothesis about what caused a certain action, and prayer is saying God did that. God is the main influence for that action. So I would focus on that hypothesis and how to test that hypothesis. Yeah.
Right. I think after doing what, why, how, I would do, if I felt brave and if I felt like my conversation partner was comfortable enough, I might do an outsider test for something else which fits under the same category of number 6, meaning some sort of strong belief, even without action, can change external reality. That's not prayer. Maybe some other thing like law of attraction. And if somebody believes that they are using the law of attraction, let's say to get money, and then they suddenly get money, do we believe that that person is actually doing what they think they're doing? Or could this person be mistaken? How do we feel about this other thing? The problem with that, though, is you run the risk of not knowing what their position is on that. Maybe they also believe in the law of attraction and prayer or something like that.
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
They very well could.
That's another hypothesis on the table for the potential cause of the effect of like getting money. Is it the universe getting you money? Is it God getting you money? Is it some other invisible thing doing it? And how can we tell if we're mistaken about whatever?
Yeah. This is where number 9 on the survey, number 17 on the survey, they become really helpful later on. Yeah, a test that cannot identify a failure is a valid test. So like if I pray and I get my prayers answered, then the prayer worked. And if I pray and don't get what I wanted, well, it just wasn't the right time, or it wasn't the right place, or in any case, prayer works whether it works or doesn't work. So in what way could we test this idea in such a way as we would accept that it's not there if it's false? That would be another conundrum to go down. Yeah. Cool.
To decide in their relationships and all that sort of thing. But I think a lot of people believe that it works, and if they didn't believe it worked, then they probably would not do it.
Awesome. Well, we could go on and on and on. I love this discussion. I love the input, and I'm eager to meet up with everybody maybe later on this week in the afternoon, since I'm not really a morning person. I had to drink a lot of coffee to get ready for this. I just want to drive everybody, please write down or open a web browser and go to streetepistemology.com. There's so many other channels other than mine that do this.
Is that a tub of coffee in the background?
Maybe a jar of peanuts on the ground. I don't know.
Okay. And it's really fascinating.
Looks like a coffee
Looking
tin.
at other people's beliefs in a way that's non-confrontational. It's just asking questions, and it really does help us reform our own ideas. And I really encourage people, engage with people that you don't agree with. Record your conversations, listen back to them, and check out other people that do the same thing. Again, my channel is Abstract Activist. You can find me on YouTube. If my channel is kind of hard to find because there's 2 common words. So if you type in "how to instill doubt," you should find my channel. How to Instill Doubt by Showing How to Instill Doubt is the name of one of my more popular.
I could probably
videos,
cut
so
all
you'll
this
find
out,
me that
but
way.
yeah.
Otherwise, if there's any other questions, we can end there. I'll let Al and Lisa take over.
Nathan, that was so interesting, and it exceeded my expectations. I had really high expectations of it being an interesting discussion, and it blew my mind. So
just wait until we get to when we should believe, because that's the most incredible part.
Well,
So
I look forward to having some follow-up sessions. I hope you can join us again, because this has been fantastic, and I want to practice it. I want to go through some role playing and actually dig into it and practice.
Yeah, and you guys just saw a little bit of it. There are actually 3 additional sections. I think it's 3 additional polling sections where the questions get very, very interesting. And so maybe we do a follow-up event for those that are interested, and we could work our way through those other 3 polls and take some of the learnings from this session and into another one. So if there's interest in that, we'll get that on the calendar. Go ahead, Ellen, you wanted to say something.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. And I want to add a coda to what I said. Beliefs drive action.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the things I wanted to say about number 6 is I think that number 6 can be interpreted in more than just one way. And if my conversation partner interprets belief itself to be an action, I just go with that interpretation. I don't see any problem with that, because to me, it gets at the heart of why I even do this at all. Why I even care about other people's ideas? I care about other people's ideas because they are necessarily consequential to me and my community. And I care what people think a great deal. And so if somebody agrees to number 6 on the basis that when our minds are changed, it changes the external world, I got no bones to pick about that. It has to do with how we interpret number 6. And so if somebody goes with that interpretation, I just roll with it.
Yeah, it is so important, probably more important now than ever, that we care about why people believe what they believe and how they came to know what they know. And we can discuss it openly and respectfully. And that's exactly why I knew we had to have you. And,
yay! I'll be back.
And before we get out of here, though, I do want to point out William Newbill. I saw you earlier raising your hand, and I didn't get to you because the conversation was ongoing. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, no, I just want to clarify, when we were talking about the word reality, what I always think of is objective reality.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that helps at all, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. And the other, quickly on question 6, I think an interesting question is this thing about the placebo effect. I just thought it's sort of an exception to the way I would answer the question.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting question. And that's all I got.
Good point. And then we can quibble all day long about whether or not our bodies are external or if they're internal, right? Are our bodies internal? I mean, I drive my body around all day. So if we consider my body external, then I wonder what would be internal, or where the dividing line between external and internal are, right?
Exactly.
Thanks, Dallas. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today, and I really appreciate you bringing me on.
We
Thank
appreciate
you,
you,
Nathan.
Nathan.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great
Cool.
day.
That's pretty much it.
You
too.
Awesome.
Yeah, there's like closing and all that. So, but I figure before we go, I'm wondering like how well I did from your perspective, and maybe ways. Is this an effective way to get people who are curious about SE to get their hands dirty and practice SE without having to necessarily take a stake in a claim? Is taking a stake in a claim necessary to do a training session? I have so many questions, like what could I have done to what's our confidence that they actually walked away with some good impression on how to conduct an SE interview? Maybe they don't have a good idea. Maybe they do have a good idea. Yeah,
I doubt that they got the idea of how to do the SE interview. I think what you're doing with the survey is you're going into the really deep part of what is the epistemology. And you're going so deep in with the survey, you're going directly in so far past that you're not even involving a particular claim. You're talking about everything in general. How do I process my epistemology? And I think that's excellent and advanced. I think the difficulty might be one of scale for time, in that if you're bringing this to a group of people for which this is their first option, they're not really seeing the structure of street epistemology, how we get into a claim, all the stuff that's on each end. And you're focusing on that really juicy bit in the middle of how do we actually explore the reasons why and how to evaluate those. So I really love it for the second class.
Right, for like maybe intermediate or something.
Yeah.
Like after the rapport and the purpose and everything is brought up and definitions and stuff.
Yeah,
Okay.
I really love it. If I were to do a class with people, I'm going to say, and the next class I'm going to send you over to, actually you're over here on this screen, send you over to Nathan, and he's going to get really into the epistemology part. And the beauty of the survey is you can deal with any number of people who are willing to interact together. If I'm dealing with a claim, there's very much a dialogue that's going along and then commentary about that dialogue. In the case of this, it's everybody's putting their epistemology out front and talking about what are good ways to think about things. And so it's a really important meta skill in SE.
Yeah, like the street epistemology community is a subset of like the skeptic community. And these questions or statements, these statements are about skepticism and, and epistemology. And it's like there's a set of answers to these statements that in terms of agreeing or disagreeing that would probably align with like the SE community's answers in general or values. So it's like, then we have like a set of answers to compare against people outside of the SE community, and then how to adjudicate that disagreement. And, using SE is a good way to do that. And these statements or principles come up in just random conversations about really anything. So it's good to have us all in the SE community and the skeptic community on the same page in terms of our responses to these statements, so that we can better have conversations around whatever.
I think this exercise that you did was just awesome. So even particularly for people like me that are new to SE, so when I see your videos, I learn from that, and then I go out and introduce it into my workshops. Cool. And so I would just encourage you to keep doing more, put more of your stuff out there, because anything that you might see as maybe should have done this better, should have done that, that's just trivial to me. Like, to me, there's so much good stuff in what you do. It's like, just put as much out there as you can. Yeah. So thanks, Nathan. Your stuff has been great for me personally. So keep doing it.
Awesome. Thanks, man. I really like all that feedback. I'll consider for sure. One thing I need to learn is just cranking out content and putting it out there, because I know that's the thing I need to work on the most. I'm hesitant and very self-conscious, and I'm afraid of making mistakes. I recognize that, and I need to just like acknowledge them and then learn from them and move forward. And then like I'm asking other people to change, like consider changing their minds about things and what it would take to change their minds. And here I am hesitant to acknowledge that I have a standard by which I haven't reached yet. And it's fine to to change my mind and change even the principles on the survey. They're all made up anyway. They're just made up by people. So yeah. All right, cool. Well, we'll be doing another there'll be more opportunities for more conferences, and I'll see if I can get onto some of those and improve from there.
Yeah.
Anything else from anybody? What was that?
Speaking of future conferences, the American Atheist Conference is coming up this weekend, and then we'll be doing a SE workshop, I think, on the first Monday of every Monday in April. Is that right? So potentially,
are we doing the 5th?
I don't, or maybe not. Maybe just the starting on whatever the second Monday.
I was hearing the 12th, 19th, and the 26th. I hadn't heard about the 5th, though I don't mind.
Then it's probably just the 12th, 19th, and 26th. Yeah. So that's another SE workshop opportunity, and potentially, and then there's also tabling this weekend. So, maybe Nathan, you can do your survey at some point during the day on the tabling days this weekend.
Would love to. Yeah, that was part of the reason why I wanted to get this out there. I've been sitting on this video for months. But I haven't done anything with it because there were certain moments where I wasn't super proud of, and technical difficulties and yada yada. But then I figured, like, since we're all brainstorming on ways in which we can condense a good experience with SE, I figured I'd just throw this out there and get your guys' feedback on it. And I'm glad that we liked a lot of it. So I'll share this video and see how well it does. And I'll try to make improvements from there.
Sounds good.
Right.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, I'm really grateful for the three of you to join me today. So thanks a lot, everybody. I'll make sure to thank you for that. I'll make sure to put all of your information in the description of the video. And thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Nathan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See you next time.